Guys, welcome to the fourth episode of Changing Gears. My name is Tun. I am here with Toby and Fru, as always. If you're sick of seeing their faces, we're going to get some new guests on at some point. They're just easy to get. They love talking about Gears of War, so I get them on, and they are very much. I'm very much thankful for them offering up their free time. So, boys, how are we doing? It was an eventful week.
Yeah, very, very eventful week. The Sunday qualifier was something we'll touch, but that blew my mind. It was a great tournament and some interesting things coming from that.
Toby.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Head and hands.
Right,
Is it that bad?
Fair enough. That was my reaction. I was watching some streams on Sunday, and when I saw Obey's performance, I was like, "Oh my god, this is actually happening." I don't know if you remember, I was talking about their performance, or inconsistent performance in tournaments in the previous Changing Gears, and then all of a sudden they hear me out well, and they perform really, really well.
If anything, it's you that's won it for them. I think. I think
think?
Since you've inspired
Should I
them,
become their coach? Just leave casting to become their coach and just take all success.
Yes.
What happens when they have to go over to America, though, Toby?
I'll wait. I'll get back to casting.
Remote in. Just get him on one of those. I don't know if you've seen Modern Family, but they have the grandpa come in on like the moving tablet screen, and he like follows them around. It's got a little webcam on it.
Let's put Toby in my suitcase. We'll get him. But yes, okay. Let's touch on it. A very, very eventful qualifying weekend. On Sunday, of course, the second qualifier did take place over the planet. Actually, I was about to say over Europe, but of course it was over North America, Latin America. But we are going to be mostly concentrating on Europe. We'll touch again on North America, as said. But some surprises in Europe. Anony somehow going on to win it. EU's finest, knocked out round number 3 by the looks of things. Some funny results again, and this is maybe testament to what we said last week, that even if you had a bad first week, shit don't matter. Even if you had a good first week, you still have a lot of time to change things, maybe for the better or the worse through.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows, right? It just shows anyone can win these, and it takes one fluke result, one good result in the favor of Obey in this case, and it opens up the whole tournament. And look at what we've got. We've got a completely different final to what we're used to. And both Anony and Obey, they showed up. So fair play to them. They deserve to be there.
What are we thinking, Toby? Surprised?
Yeah, a bit surprised. I think you have to touch upon EU's finals round 3. No one saw that coming. We thought, and I think everybody, people who watch it, players, us, we believe EU's finals are always going to make to the grand final. This time around, they don't. And it's not the first online tournament, with the EGL tournaments as well. EU's finalists, they've had time to settle in, but round 3, they actually lose out to Obey. I know I touched upon this last week, that Obey have been very successful in their scrims online, but I don't think they've actually, I'm not too sure if they actually beat EU's finalists online in a scrim, but they did in a tournament.
Would you even count a scrim?
Of course, a scrim, yeah, of course. But my point is, EU's finalists never really showed any cracks apart from in terms of actually map count. From knowledge, it's just round count. In maps they've been a bit closer than they thought. But yeah, Obey, they beat EU's finals round 3 early on, and then Obey took that momentum all the way to the grand final. Didn't win in the end. But shout out to them for really pulling up their socks, if you will, and giving it to them.
Yeah, that match. I mean, they played on bunker. It was 7-5 the score in the end, so it was a close match against EU's finest. But they just broke down the map in a really nice way. They kind of halted the aggression from EU's finest. They had a torque bow placed on their own home hill, which is something that you don't really see in the meta currently. It's usually that drop shot, usually that mark, so that you see quite often. So they just basically utilized their first spawns to get middle ground and had the torque bow just holding up, so no one could follow them in. And they pretty much, I'd say 80% of the time, opened up with the torque bow for the first kill of the round, and it really put a dampener in EU's finance aggression, and they made great use of it. It was really good to see a team looking at how they can set up a map differently, and really utilizing that against an extremely strong opponent as well. It worked out for them. They also did the exact same thing against Top Boys in the next round. So it's a strat that works. I was a little bit confused not to see it in the final, but that was weapon placements pending, right? So yeah, I mean, it was definitely good to see.
Yeah, and I think we'll touch on gameplay a little bit later because, as you said, the way that they were aggressive at the beginning of games was definitely helping them out. Talk more, of course. But either way, some surprising results. If you're EU's finest in this one, what are you thinking? Are you thinking we're still the best and it was just a blip, or is it a worrying occurrence?
I think they're still the best.
Yeah,
right.
It's one tournament,
one map.
Yeah. I think 5 times out of 6, let's say, that they'll win it. I was going to say 4 times out of 5, but they will win that matchup, right? But there are on occasions teams will step up and teams will take it to these top teams, and we saw it last time in an A bracket. Mesa beat NRG. We saw Ghost lose to New Goons. Like there are teams all around the globe that are now challenging these top tier teams, and I think you're going to see it, especially in the best of 1 format.
Good week in the end for Top Boys as well. They had a better time of things anyway. Of course, getting through to the semi-finals, then down to A, of course. Yep. We seeing them hit their stride a little bit, do you think? Or was it maybe just a better bracket this week instead of?
I think they had some tough games. Yeah. I don't think it was an easy bracket by any means. They just didn't have EU's finest in first round.
This is more of a praise as well for Obey, because it's Obey Alliance who beat them in the end 2-0. I'm reading.
Yep.
And Top Boys, the players are Marsh, Postman, Strikers, Notorious, Cookies, and Boz, including their coach. And those are some formidable names. You'd expect a team like that to get together and be able to get near the grand finals, semi-finals pretty consistently on paper, right? Mm-hmm. Notorious, for example, fairly new player in terms of like the LAN scene strictly. But he was like one of the best 1v1 players on Gears 4. So you'd expect him to be coming in hot and through raw skill combined with the likes of Marsh, for example. We don't need to go into him too much. Should be able to, raw skill their way through the game during these early times. But they've performed very inconsistently. At times you feel like they've had some losses that they perhaps shouldn't.
Yep.
And
including in this tournament, actually. It was 6-3 up on the first map and lost 7-6. So
exactly, and I'm still considering or trying to consider in mind whether they can actually be a top team or not. It's been so inconsistent and lackluster, a lot of their performances, that it's really questionable at this point.
Yep.
Also, on the same topic.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly on the same topic. There is, like, look at the bracket they also came through. They beat the boys in first round, which I believe is Ash's team. So, that's a very strong roster there, like J Rage and Ash and Ashens and that lot. So there's a huge roster there that they've come past. Then they went past New Spain, who were in the final last time. Mm. Like, they've had a tough run. And then Obey, who've just come off, beating EU's finest, who are going to be, on fire. It's still a tough bracket, right, Toby? It's not an easy bracket. So to see them making it to that semi-final, I don't think they'll be, completely disheartened by it. I think it's not a bad result.
No, I agree. Something I actually wanted to touch upon as well was the roster they were able to beat out in the very first game for them. It was round 2 officially, but it was their first match of the tournament. They played against a team named The Boys. Top Boys beat The Boys, and that opposition was J Rage, Ashens, Reaction, Ash, and Incisive. That could have gone either way, and we could be here saying Top Boys, they haven't won a game the whole tournament. It's another story. It's another team that's got the same storyline. J Rage, Ashens, Reaction, Ash, Incisive. These are some incredible players, legendary even, with lots of LAN experience. Yet they're going out in the first round, and so they're not got anywhere near accumulating points to be looking at entry into the Pro League. But these are the caliber of players that you'd be looking at to really qualify and cement themselves in a Pro League. But another set of players that just aren't finding their way on Gears 5 so far.
And I think it's worth talking about the whole seeding thing that went on again. I know there was issues. I don't want to clarify if it was definitely I know at least on the North American side that the seeding didn't go through or something like. I don't know. I seen a couple of tweets about it. Not 100% sure. And, so we can speculate on that sort of thing. But again, seeding not helping people out here first and foremost. But what can you necessarily do about that in the second week? You sort of just take the cards that are drawn.
The European bracket was seeded, right? You see EU's finest at the top there. around the world on the top of that second side of the bracket. Like, this was seeded based on last week's results, and you can't do much more than that, right? Like, you're saying these teams are top teams, but they got to prove it, and you got to prove it against everyone. It's a tough draw for sure, but across 5 weeks, if you're still losing first round every week, there's something wrong. Like, and that's team wise, not tournament wise. So, seeding is an excuse to some degree. Yes, you can get. Yeah, you can definitely get much tougher brackets, especially in this first few weeks. But like you said, they're a top roster, and even if they don't make it into this, the initial pro league, there is still that opportunity later down the line to qualify for next quarter, and they will be one of those teams that will be right up there in that qualification tournament. So it's not the be all and end all.
No, absolutely not. Okay, let's talk about our winners then in Europe. Let's talk about Anony. And I was just having a look through their run. I remember I was out during the day when it was on, but I was looking at Elliot's texts as they were all flying in, and bewildered at who they went on to beat. So they beat Power in the first round. They had to win 1, 2, 3, 6 games in a row to go on to win. Then beat Around the World, who finished second last.
Mm-hmm.
Then beat. Rings about my side of beat DBH, beat Versatile, beat R Damage, and then beat OB Alliance in the final. Where have they come out of?
That's a good question.
Is everyone pretty much stumped at this point?
Dragons. I recognize Dragons. The other players I've seen in passing, but I wouldn't look at this roster and think, hey, you today you're going to be R Damage, you're going to be Versatile, all these teams around the world. And you can see the map scores as well. 7-2 against Around the World, it says. 7-1 against DBH following. 2-0 against R Damage in the semi. It was the best 3. Mm-hmm. Like, they've done really well. I'm not surprised that they won in the end. I thought Obey was going to finish it off.
Yeah, it's not like they got like a nice side of the bracket or something. They've played some good teams. They haven't there's no spring chickens in that lineup. That everybody in there is fairly well versed who they went on to play, and so I think everybody has to give credit to this one. A lot of people sort of say online, etc., but you have to give them their due. They're playing the same environment as everybody else is for the most part, you'd imagine. So I think you have to really take your hats off to them, and they suddenly, with one win like this, we have spoke about consistency being the main thing, but with a win like this, their hat is very well and truly in the ring.
Yeah, 100%.
I'll be interested to see how they keep going. That's going to be the question. It's not so much, okay, you win 1 week, what do you do next week? Because we've seen United AU's finest went on to win last week pretty convincingly, as we expected. They drop out round number 3 this week, so it can happen. It's about consistency. Can they keep it up next week? What do we think?
I mean, their players are all very individually skilled. I mean, Bossman saying in the chat, Slays and Dragon Pains. These are all players that we've seen perform before, and I like Dov on that team. They're just consistently good players individually, and it looks like it's clicked for them, right? It looks like they've started to play well. If they can bring the same intensity that they brought this week to next week, I can't see them going out early again unless they have a really bad run, and that's bracket deciding. Now they've got that 200 points. They'll be probably top of that second side of the bracket. I think EU's finals will still be top total, but they're gonna have what one would assume to be quite an easy bracket, or at least the easier side of the bracket without EU's finest in it. So, yes, is probably the short answer. I think they'll do okay, but whether or not they'll win it, I'm not sure. I think EU's finest will come back a little bit.
Do you think it's like there's now more on the line for EU's finest to the point of where it's like, oh shit, okay, we haven't won this one. We'll play it 2-1-1. Pretty good position to be in, but let's just make sure we strap up here. Like, this is not, we can't be messing around. We need to make sure we qualify. I don't think they're in any sort of jeopardy for this, but do you think this is maybe going to awaken the beast a little bit for them, or what we thinking, Toby? Do you think they could maybe tilt a little bit? I don't think they're that sort of team.
I'm pretty sure one of them tweeted afterwards or said in Twitch chat, I heard about it, that they don't practice enough or they don't play enough. Like straight after. That's what they said. I'm not sure if that was a jerk reaction, if they all agree with such a sentiment, but or if it was just them trying to look for a reason why they lost. I mean, they were probably quite shocked in terms of maybe not how it went down, but actually just seeing, oh, we've gone out around 3, guys. We're used to taking this easily, having fun while doing it. I think yeah, they might play their usual way, their usual methods and things, but they perhaps won't take every match as lightly as usual now, as they have experienced a loss, and just the motivation to not make sure that doesn't happen again will at least perhaps ensure they're a bit more consistent with their performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're consistent, right? Look at everything in the past. They win almost everything at Youth Finest, and yeah, they lost a map. So what? I honestly don't think there's questions to be asked. If they lose again next week in a similar fashion, sure, but it wasn't a blowout. Yeah, it wasn't a blowout. They are the best team in Europe. Over 100 tournaments, they'd probably win 95 of them.
They won't be winning the Trip Cap Cup tonight though, because they no showed for round number 1.
Yeah, that's why I didn't say 99 out of 100. This is 2 in a row now. They're not winning, but yeah, I mean they're not in there. They got disqualified, so fair enough. But yeah, I don't think there's questions to be asked. I think they'll just go back to the drawing board and start again next week.
Not too concerned. Not too concerned for them.
Not at all.
Anything else we'd like to point out the European side of things? I don't think there's anything else of. Surprising winner to a point. Surprising EU's Finest didn't do better. Obey Alliance doing well. A little bit worried for any of the other teams. Just look through. I mean, for me, Odd Damage, you get to a semi-final, you're relatively happy. The other side of things, bit of a time. Around the world, dropping out round number 2 in the end there as well. What worries for them more so than EU's Finest?
I think maybe so worries because they came out of a very good tournament last week, the week before, sorry, and they did lose to the eventual winners, and we mentioned it, right? That Anony beat the second place team from last week. That was around the world. So is it a tough bracket? Yeah, I guess it was. That seeding wise, Anony should have, they should have fallen to the second seeded team, but it's early days. And I think next week will be a better tell of where all the teams stand, because the seedings are starting to get a little bit better, a little bit more accurate.
I think, I couldn't agree more, Alex. I think one team to potentially talk about actually is Enclave Gaming. They've had a fair bit of controversy around them this past week, and they've been right center of Rostermania, if you will, in Europe. They were doing pretty well. They've been consistent each week until this past week, where they lost out round 3. Actually, they lost a game looking at the players' names perhaps they shouldn't have, and very quickly following, the roster was changing up. I don't want to report any incorrect information, but from what I read and what I understand, Redline was dropped, which is a controversial move in itself, just because of how well they're performing, how quick it happened, and apparently the whole team split. Rather, let me get that straight. The whole team split originally. Redline then apparently got dropped, and the rest of the team got back together as a 4, leaving Redline out of it. And so there's been a lot of confusion, a lot of eyes on as to how that went down. Some screenshots of longer essays, if you will, to explain the situation on Twitter. And yeah, I thought that was a bit of a shock because of how quick it happened after they were doing so well, beating some top teams. But I think that's kind of like a sign of Rostermania. I think if a Rostermania is going to be really bad and intense, I think this current system of how new the game is, how many strong teams there are, Pro League qualification, all online based, there's going to be huge amounts of Rostermania going on everywhere. But yeah, I'm not sure how you feel about that, Alex, but that was not the greatest to read on Twitter straight after that one.
Yeah, I'd agree. They're one of those kind of up and coming teams that, looking at the roster, they have some fantastic talent, and they should be able to do okay. But it was sad news, and it wasn't great news to hear. However, that roster has been back and forth complaining about different things for a while now. It's this is not just because of one loss in a tournament. There has been questions about scheduling and commitment, all sorts of different issues, right? That they've been trying to resolve. So if this means that they do, move forward with a new pickup, and they're a more consistent and more solid team, then all power to them. However, Is this the right time to do it? I'm not sure, because
Hasn't that always been the question with European gears, though?
Yeah, and they do tend to move very quickly in these scenarios to drop players or to disband or to move teams, right? And that's the question that always has to be asked: is, was this the right time to do it? Should you have given it another week, or should you have done it last week? Where does the line draw? And you got to ask the team to get that answer, right? Maybe these issues are too difficult. Maybe actually they could have worked it out, but we won't know because they've made that decision already. I've got faith that the 4 that will move forward will find a good fifth, and hopefully they will do well in these upcoming tournaments. But it's an interesting move, especially 2 weeks into the qualifications.
Okay, well, we can put a pin in that one. I'd say touch on the American side of things. Having a quick look through, though, I mean, NRG go on to is a gaming. They actually beat NRG beating gaming. That you want to touch on from that side of things, because I think that we're a European show for the most part. Let's be honest, but like anything there that you would see that you're a little bit surprised with, or we were just pretty much typical.
Not so much from the bracket. I mean, it was big that NRG beat Maze this time around, because that's who they got knocked out by in the first tournament. Yeah. And it was the same round as well. So NRG and Maze are now bang even on points, which is kind of interesting going forwards. Begs the question of what will the bracket be next week. Otherwise, pretty business as usual. There was some news with Reciprocity that was kind of interesting. They had a few roster changes in the previous week, so interesting to see how their team lineup will come, dropping Sleepy. So that's kind of cool. Otherwise, I didn't really see anything too scary.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, we can put a pin in that and move on to something else. So there was quite. It hasn't just been around the Pro League qualifiers that we've seen Twitter drama so much this week. We have seen a lot of Gears Esports players asking some questions. The devs at this point as well, haven't we? We've been seeing a lot of questions asked about weapons. A lot of people have been talking about the Markzer. Let's be honest. Our thoughts on it from our side of things. What are we thinking? Is it far too powerful, Toby? You said this in week number 1 of Changing Gears, that the Markzer was too powerful. And this is gonna. I'm sure when you've seen that, you were like, "Oh, I've been saying it for ages, etc., etc." Because I know what you like. But let's be honest, we're thinking the Markzer is too powerful at the moment, right?
I think, yes, definitely. Universally, you hear from so many players, hey, the Markzer's too powerful, it's too effective. I see some people saying it's more powerful than a boom shot, and you'd rather you'd rather build up your Markzer before considering putting a boom shot on a hill or anywhere for that matter at spawn, and that really goes to show like how the game has changed, if you will, especially with Escalation 2.0. And the thing that concerns me the most about this Markzer issue is that it was like that in the beta as well. I was hoping that the Markzer would be nerfed immediately after the beta, if not during the beta, so we can continue testing it. Because it was 2 weekends, remember the beta. Weekend 1, okay, boom, maybe too powerful. Let's try something else, see how the community responds, and then we'll make a decision as to where we balance between the two for the final game. That wasn't done, though, unfortunately. Perhaps a missed opportunity. I don't know. I'm not a game developer. I can't speak to TC's thoughts on that. But I think universally, every pro, amateur, competitive player, I think it's clear in pubs as well that it's a bit too good for its own liking. The Boltok in just standard modes, right? The Boltok on District, for example, is where the Markzer is on different rounds. When you have one weapon that is potentially the most overpowered weapon currently to what it's perhaps aimed to be, on one round, everyone has to play for that, and then you have on alternative rounds there's the Boltok. There's nothing like it. You can imagine how quick that changes things up. It's not a centerline weapon. It's a weapon you spawn with. Okay, so it's not a change of strategy per se, which can sometimes be nice. Hey, on this round you send more numbers here because there's a boom shot instead of a drop shot. That I like that sometimes on maps. But it's not. It's a weapon you spawn with. And that even just the basics of pubs is influenced so much by this weapon being so good at what it is,
I think that is the main point, isn't it? It's not so much, okay, the weapon's powerful. It is more powerful than any iteration we've seen previously in Gears, at this point anyway. But it's the fact that people are able to get it so easily. It's not a sender weapon. it's not like, in a place like a boot.
I mean, it can be.
Well, it can be, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not going to be if it's that easy to get at your own home mill.
So on that front, just going back to the EU qualifier this week, that's one of the things that Anoni were doing that other teams were not. They were dropping that marks to center line, and they were flying for that. So there was only one on the map. Other team couldn't place it at their homes, and basically they said, "All right, you want this marks to fight us for it," and that's when teams that are going to do well in that's when they shine. And there are questions about the marks at 100%. There wouldn't be as much outrage on the likes of Twitter or whatever if there wasn't an issue with it. I don't think it's as bad as it is. Personally, I've seen teams like Obey play completely around it. They had a Torque Bow against the Markser, and the Torque Bow won, most rounds. It's not unplayable against it. It's just difficult, and you've got to find a way around it. Same with any weapon, right? If there was boom shots down that were, like we saw in Gears 4, the boom and the drop just got dropped down pretty much instantly for teams that want to fight in the middle. You had to find a way around it, and right now that's the state of the game. That's how we have to play it. Whether or not it's worth complaining about, probably worth tuning down a little bit, but there are ways to play it, and there are ways around it to avoid that marks a threat if you are so scared by it or if you don't want to play it.
Yeah, and just to quickly point out on this, and we had this conversation on WhatsApp through the week, because Elliot was quite upset at times. You know how passionate he gets. And, we had to have the conversation of, like, people were sort of slating TC on Twitter, and I think I want to maybe defend them a little bit to the point of where, okay, we've talked about in the beta, etc., they could have changed things up. But I don't think a lot of people realize how long it takes to sort these things out. Like, they have to pass so many different things. I mean, look, you work for, like, a studio, so you'll know better than me, but typically always down the years, if anything's wanted to be changed by the competitive community or just the community as a whole, you can't just there's not just some geezer.
He's not turning a dial, right?
He's not just going, right,
yeah,
if I just click 3 times, it's live. It doesn't work like that. It'd be lovely if it did, don't get me wrong, but there's processes people have to go through. It is not just a case of change it, do it. It's all to, people, I think, have got stuck in their ways about this sort of thing because they seem what, Fortnite have done, where they're constantly changing stuff all the time, and if there is a change that needs to be made, they'll make it straight away. But because that's because they've got their own client, so they can do that, they can push this through. But if you are TC, you have to go to Microsoft to push this through, and that is not a simple process. You have to line it up with their updates. It has to be sent weeks in advance and all this shit. So I think that for all that we can talk about, yes, okay, it should have maybe been tested earlier, and they should have maybe changed it around earlier so we could try different things. I think there's still a point of it's not something that can be fixed quickly.
Yeah, 100%. There is a massive process. You've got to wait for the data first of all. That to get an accurate data set. Yeah, you're talking weeks, if not a month, right, before you can really get a full picture of how the game is played. Especially at a top level, like we're seeing in competitive, it's not the same as ranks, and the players don't utilize the weapons in the same way. So that's the first step. Then you've got to test that theory in house and say, okay, we assume this is slightly too powerful. You give it to your data analyst, they crunch the numbers. They've got to take a bit of time to come through with a hypothesis and test against it. And then you give it to your devs and say, look, this is the issue. This is the question. This is the issue. This is the data that we've got as a result. Propose a fix. And then you've got to go through that, the whole designing of the fix. It's not just a simple number change, because that number change may have effects all the way down the line for every other weapon. Not saying the number is affecting, but changing one weapon. If you nerf one weapon, another weapon might become more powerful as a result if it's a bit of a counter to it. So there's a lot of balancing to be done, and then you've got to test it internally. You've got to roll it out, as you said. You've got to put it through certification and basically just get it to the client. Right? There are methods of doing this in a much more efficient way, and yes. There is. I think Toby will probably touch on this. I think he has an issue with the communication of how this.
Just to get it straight for Bossman in the chat, we're not completely defending them to the point of where we absolutely agree with everything that has been said and done. But it's not just as easy as everyone makes out.
So I'll address what he said here. But we've had TU1. That is true. We have had TU1. TU1 drops October 1st. However, the way title updates work is usually the first title update is already defined, right?
It's already sorted like weeks ago.
Yeah, you will submit your game, to be ready for ship, going gold. And then after that, you will continue work. You're not just going to stop work between the point at which you submit it and you launch. So that work there is your TU1 work up until, maybe 2 weeks ago. So then after the launch, that's when you start getting your data. There's no way that you can turn around from launch and all the issues that come with launching the game to TU1 in a month's time, less than a month's time, actually. It was the 5th to the 1st, and then roll out a patch that's going to be thoroughly designed and tested. It's just not a realistic time. TU2, if there's not an answer in TU2,
then there'll be
then I will be 100% on your side and worried about it. However, that TU1 will have been decided a long time ago, and then it's just quick fixes and stuff that we can throw into that TU before it goes live. That will be in there.
And the thing is, as well, weapons won't be their priority. It'll be bugs, those sort of things for the first initial. It's how things happen. It's like, look, in a perfect world, they'd fix shit instantly, and we know that people have been complaining about it for some time. We'd love to see it fixed immediately, but there is time constraints around these couple of things. Thank you to everybody new in the chat. I think it was actually Kenny Bounce who did host us up, so thank you very much for that.
Nice.
Plenty of people in here right now. So if you've never tuned in before, it's Changing Gears, a European talk show on Gears of War. So if you want to stick around, you can do. Listen to us waffle about Gears. We've already talked about the Pro League qualifier number 2 from last week. So if you have missed any of that, we are actually live on Spotify, Apple, now Google as well, and YouTube afterwards if you want to up to this point. But hopefully you stick around. But as far as the marks goes, though, I think we're all in agreement that it is pretty bad. That's not what we're disputing. What we're disputing
we'd love to see it.
Yeah. That we're not disputing that point. I think it's to the point of where we know how long irrelevant of when it's been called. It does take some time. Anything else gameplay wise, Toby? I know you wanted to touch on a couple of other things.
Yeah, 2 things actually. The flashbang, I think, is a good talking point, and then there's aim assist and bullet magnetism, which is probably my main pet peeve with this game. Aim assist, bullet magnetism.
So there was something in
the case though. It's always going to be the case because I'm a competitive player or a veteran. I want the game as skillful as possible and everything built in an elitist way. But of course, I'm not everyone. Not everyone is an elite player in Gears of War, and I understand why there is aim assist and bullet magnetism in the game. I guess going into that in detail first, then before flashbang, it is my opinion that perhaps the aim assist and bullet magnetism is a little bit too far done, is a bit too overtuned, a bit too powerful, at least for ranked play. That's my issue with it. If you want to make quick play casual versus as aim assist and bullet magnetism heavy, have it lock on if you want Fortnite style.
See, now you're starting to get in a dangerous territory though, because then you start blurring the lines too much between competitive and normal play.
How do you mean?
To the point of where, why would you play a completely different game on ranked? What you should be playing the
exactly, but the point is,
this is going back to Gears 4.
This
right?
is it. Exactly, yeah, it's 2 tuners. We don't have aim assist on escalation execution, and it does feel like a completely different game. It does really, 8 out of 10, let's say 9 out of 10 players will hit you full brick, full red every single time in any mode. If you're not going as hard as you can, wall bouncing early, using cover as perfect as possible to avoid shots. Okay. When you go into escalation execution, that number drops significantly to 2 out of 10. It's a huge difference in how you play and how any player of any skill finds the game working for them in terms of their opposition and how they must play, etc. For players like myself, through amateurs, pros, they notice this. Their performance stays relatively the same. They get the same amount of eliminations, kills, and whatnot. But they notice, despite statistically not being too different in how they perform, they are getting taken out. They're having to play in a different way just to accommodate the fact that the opposition is perhaps as way more accurate than they believe they should be. My issue is that these ranked modes have aim assist or bullet magnetism or combination of both in things like King of the Hill, Team Deathmatch, Guardian, where there's ranks. Hey, quick play, we can assert that as the casual experience. Let's allow the newer players to experience that first. Have training wheels, if you will.
I think you should just whack it off in every game mode.
That would be nice, but we're trying to accommodate newer players and get players in Gears. Fair enough.
Teach them properly. That's my issue.
Then you can make it clear on ranked. Hey, this is ranked now. Perhaps we could introduce a level cap Now you don't have as much aim assist. You'll experience the difference. How about TDM? How about Guardian? More of the more casual ranked modes to play where you respawn. Things are a bit simpler and they're not as competitively heavy in terms of teamwork, strats, etc. Just having escalation execution with aim assist disabled is an issue for me because I feel that's gone way too far in how much aim assist you're applying to the modes. And it's really restricting the veteran players, not only competitive players like myself, pros, etc., but players who are veterans at this game who really don't like aim assist, even though they've never competed in their life. They're the players that typically want to play King of the Hill. King of the Hill is their favorite mode. They prefer that to escalation. But King of the Hill has aim assist. My tweet that I put out was a suggestion to bring that balance a little bit further back. So it's not aim assist in, 75% of modes, should we say. Let's cut it more evenly and at least give King of the Hill to the veteran players who would prefer to have aim assist off. Because we know even competitive players play King of the Hill. That's the go-to mode typically. When you're on your own, you just want to chill, talk to chat on stream. You don't want to commit to a huge escalation match, and execution is a non-respawn mode, and it's very unique. Mm-hmm. Give us King of the Hill, take aim assist off that, and then we can have a bit more of a level ground, a bit more of a balance, in my opinion, in how this game's designed.
To be honest, I agree. I just get rid of it. I don't think there's a purpose for it. I don't think Gears is the type of game in which you need it, right? Like, you can play Gears without aim assist. Escalation proves that. The top players prove that. And quite honestly, just teach the players properly. Like, if you're getting slapped around in ranked, it's your problem, right? Like, these other players are on the same, they're literally at the same playing ground. Like, if you have aim assist off and everyone's playing and there are people better than you, that's the state of the game. And that's for you to overcome. That's not for the game to overcome for you. I completely agree with everyone in the chat.
I think it has to be all or nothing, doesn't it? Let's be honest. I think you either put it in for everything, obviously torn back from where it's at, or you take it out of everything. For me personally, I think you start changing things in different modes, especially changing them in different ranked modes. I can understand quick play and like maybe having like a beginner's, sort of playlist like up to a certain level where there's a bit of aim assist or a lot of aim assist, whatever. Like, I just think that having it in certain ranked modes is ridiculous to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think
what this gets insane. To though. This discussion then lends into why on earth is TDM and Guardian a ranked mode?
Yeah,
they shouldn't be ranked modes. When you guys started talking about TDM as perhaps potential for esports, I was starting to pull my hair out because that mode, even in ranked play with stacked teams, not even 5v5, 4v4 stacked teams, it is a race of who can spawn trap the other team first, and that is it. And that is as far as strategy goes. I don't think it's suitable for even ranked play. Never mind competitive.
Well,
and you have aim assist in there. You have Guardian. I appreciate that TC want to use their ranking system on as many modes as possible and have, those playlists quality upgraded into much more of a larger, more depthy experience. But I just feel like at the core, hey, let's make ranked seem a bit more competitive. Let's focus on the competitive nature of ranked. Let's keep the ranking system for the core competitive modes. And then players will go into the games expecting to have a tough game, a longer game, a game where they can't leave midway because they think it's TDM and it's COD. No, that's not how it works. No, nothing against COD. But you have league play, and this is my example. You guys have league play for that kind of experience. Right now, we have ranked TDM.
We sometimes have league play.
Okay, and then down the playlist, we also have escalation, aim assist disabled, and that disparity between the two is humongous. It is like comparing core and competitive tuning, but even further because of the mode differential. It's huge, and people don't realize that. And it's unfortunate to see. I wish we could have aim assist kept as a casual experience for the game.
Put it in arcade mode, right?
Put it in arcade, definitely. Yeah. I think arcade even has more bullet magnetism or something.
Yeah. That's a different tuning.
There we go. Different tuning. Give it to the core modes. Okay, I'm ranting. I'm going to finish right now with this.
This
is my ideal playlist since Gears 2 would have been ranked. We have execution and we have escalation. Ranked modes, competitive modes, time proven, have ranks on that. And then for every other mode, let's have them in the quick play section. Have a versus, loads of mode like a Royal Rumble, like a Halo with loads of different, like Halo does, of course, different modes in there. Then you have TDM front and center, of course, very popular mode. Guardian, maybe arguments to have that as a ranked mode back in Gears 2 due to how competitive and generally how it played and how popular it is. But at least Gears 3 onwards, Execution Escalation, ranked modes. The rest, let's have as casual versus modes. Don't put ranks on them because it sends the wrong message. We already have a quitting problem, etc. Let's really differentiate between a ranked experience and a more casual experience where you play with friends.
Are we happy to put a pin in it?
Yeah, we are.
All right, okay. I said, like, my piece would be that I think as a beginner thing that you can't leave a playlist until, like, if there's like a certain level cap, maybe throw something in there like an aim assist. But outside of that, I think you're at the point of where you're not playing a completely different game, but it's slightly different to a point of, I think instead of trying to blend people in, have this aim assist, people, build themselves up, then they go into ranked, and then they don't have aim assist. For me, that it would hurt them more because you go in from like an arcade mode and you're like flying around thinking, fuck yeah, I'm the shit. And then suddenly you go into ranked play and you get battered. You are not going to want to play that shit anymore. Like, you are not going to be you're not going to be enthused whatsoever. You're going to be like, I'm going back to my comfort zone, back to arcade. I think it has to be all or nothing for me personally. I think there has to be a playlist where people build themselves up. They get to the point of, right, okay, I feel like I'm ready for the normal sort of thing now. Let's move into this. And they can't go back to playing with aim assist. It has to be, down to be playing with everybody else in the rank mode, even in arcade. I get the 50-50 thing, but for me, absolutely, all rank play should have nothing. Aim assist should not exist at all in rank play. If it's going to be not exist in one game mode, why the fucking hell's in the other ones? I don't know. I think it's a weird decision. But I know you wanted to talk about flashbangs, Toby, so come on. I know we've had this discussion before, especially on week number 1 where we were talking about King of the Hill. We were talking about other game modes potentially coming in. Flashbangs, is it a deterrent to King of the Hill?
I won't have as much of a long rant on this one because I'm sure you guys get sick of me and then the stream alike. But the issue with the flashbang for me is I don't think we need a flashbang or anyone wants a flashbang. What we always wanted and what we asked,
you were saying in the first week. We were saying in the first week that it would be far too hard to break down setups if you didn't have a flashbang thing there.
Okay,
I think flashbang has a purpose, but I don't.
I think there is a purpose.
The visuals.
This is the function. The visuals. Yeah, well, this is my point, right? We've been asking since Gears 2, I think. Gears 2, maybe. Gears 3, I think, I'm pretty sure on the pro community have asked for the smoke grenade and the stun that the smoke creates to be split up. Boom. We were looking forward to that because we had an idea that could be happening in Gears 5. But we don't have a stun and a smoke. We have a flashbang and a smoke. And the issue with the flashbang for me is not only does it blind you, which has been quite uncomfortable looking at people's opinions in how it works. Yes, it flashes. A long time, mind you. The flash is up.
I agree. Yeah.
The issue for me is that it's not only a flashbang, it's also a stun grenade. Can we have one or the other? If you're going to get blinded, please leave the ability for one to shoot, to defend themselves.
But that's what a flashbang is, right?
And also,
you can't see, but you should still be able to
take cover
do shit,
or move. Don't
a real flashbang.
Have a huge stun that lasts forever.
Let's test it. Let's put Toby in a room with a flashbang.
We throw flashbangs.
Just start wall bouncing in a tiny room, of course, while blind. Yeah, that's my issue. If it was a stun grenade, I think a lot of the concerns would be removed. In terms of keeping it as effective as possible, having that visual part as well to break setups, and given how hard it is to do on this game compared to all the Gears games, we can play with that. We can make the stun length longer. We can, do different things, I guess. That always comes down to testing. Not sure how that would go, but I think a flashbang and the stun, it's a bit of a nuisance right now. And I think, honestly, it's probably not the esports side that suffers the most. It's probably more the casual players who don't want to get flashbanged over and over again, as discussed before in King of the Hill. Let's focus on one or the other. Let's have a flashbang, a flash. Maybe the flash lasts longer if it doesn't have a stun, or let's have a stun grenade. Maybe the stun is longer. Let's not have both. It's quite frustrating. Alex, what are your thoughts?
I somewhat agree. So I don't like the the theory that a flashbang shouldn't stun you because those things are deadly, and a flashbang
We're in a game.
as it is.
We're in a game.
We're in a game, which is exactly my point, right? Listen, right? We are in a game, which is why we don't have to have a flashbang, right? It can be separate grenades, just like we split the smoke grenade into a flashbang and a smoke. This time around, that flashbang could be then brought down further into its components, something to temporarily blind people, but in a very severe way. And something to stun them, to basically disable them for a few seconds. And that's maybe where it needs to go. For me, I can't. There are people in the chat saying, flashbangs shouldn't be in there. Flashbangs should be removed. Flashbangs, they're not gears. They're a weird addition, I'll give you that. But they can't not be in there because they are vital to keep the game as it is, right? Like, if you remove them, there's no counterplay to holds.
There has to be slight tuning to them. We all agree, I think, but you can't just cut something out of the game because
exactly
it upsets the balance.
It has impacts all the way down, which is that is more difficult to balance than it is sorting out the actual problem with the flashbang, which is it does everything, and compared to the smoke, it does everything almost better as well.
Yeah, why would you ever pick the smoke at this point? Outside of certain situations.
There are very specific situations, right? You've got a guy up top on Icebound, you want to block his vision completely, you throw the smoke up there. But I think it's more of a question of how and when you give players these flashbangs. And for me, it's just don't give them off first spawn. Like that's kind of how I feel, is that have them as a pickup, have them as something that you can give to your players. But those initial two players, just don't give them anything. In execution, in escalation, that is. King of the Hill is a more difficult one. I don't really know how to solve that, and it's too big of an issue for a single talk show. But for me, I would say buff the smoke grenade, because that's the opposite side of this, is that players always pick the flashbang because it is so powerful. In a team game, if you buff the smoke grenade, let's say, a smoke goes down and you can't see spots going behind it, or you can't actually physically spot players through it.
You shouldn't be able to do that.
Exactly.
Players have been doing that in 1v1 tournaments, for example, for the whole of Gears 4. Like they'd smoke at the start and then just spam the spot to spot you and then get a huge advantage. I really don't like that part, but
yeah. So that's what I do. I'd give some buffs to the smoke grenade because I think that is needed anyway. And then for the flash grenade, I try and make it a little bit more specific. So, turn you back on it, you don't get the full screen glare, so you can turn back around and fight again, right? If it's behind you, have a cone of explosion rather than a radius of explosion, so it explodes in the direction at which it's thrown at. Like, there are things that can make it a more skillful choice that don't necessarily remove the impact of what that grenade does. And that's kind of what I'd be looking to do if I was, in charge of the decision. Whether or not that's what the community wants, you'd have to try it, I guess. But it's a question that we're going to be asking for a while, I think, and rightly so. They have a major impact on, especially the respawn game modes.
Nothing else to add on them. I think that realistically, we all know, and we have done since the beginning, that the flashbangs do need a tune. I absolutely agree to the point of, it does a little bit too much. Okay, to be blinded, can't see shit, but to the point of where if you were blinded but you know where they'll come from, you can at least try and pop off a shot to at least have a chance. But if you are flashed, you are dead, essentially, at this point. So I think it does maybe need moving back just a tad.
Or a counterplay. Counterplay. Because there is the, the yeah, exactly. I don't know what a counterplay to a flashbang would be, but, there are, the close quarters combat where you can jump over and knife people. There are counterplays to that. So maybe if you see a flash grenade coming, you can hide away, or I don't know. Just ideas, right? Just ideas. Don't take that too far.
Okay, we'll put a pin in the flashbang one for now, because I feel that's something that we'll probably revisit 15 other times this year. Yeah. Let's talk about Rostomania, though. There's been a few changes already, as typical with Gears of War. Everybody changes. One bad result, get rid of everybody. Anything in particular you want to touch on this one? There's been a couple of big ones.
I think we talked about a lot of them. I know in America things have been changing up quite a bit as of recently. The one that stood out to me that we haven't mentioned so far is Demo Bounce. Demo has been changing roster recently, and he's a veteran that said he wasn't playing at one point. He's now playing. Reciprocity have had some roster changes, and that's generally been the talk of the town on Twitter as of recently, at least this week, is roster mania going on so strong in the Gears of War scene. Something I will repeat myself on again, especially to the new viewers, is don't get too disheartened about roster mania being so up in the air currently in terms of Gears esports. It's the start of the game, right? Gears 5 is new.
Everyone figuring out who's good at this one.
Everyone's trying to work out who's good as who. It's only online stuff at the moment, and so it's early days for everyone as they try and get the best possible team they can. We've seen the upsets going on in the brackets. NRG losing out to Mesa recently. EU's Finest have been losing out. Teams aren't performing as perhaps they want to be, even at the top level. So if you look at the amateurs who are looking at that, they'll be like, it's all up in the air. I'm going to try and make a move. I'm going to try and make a roster change that can set me up for the rest of this season. And so it's expected almost for Roster Mania to be up and chatting so strongly right now. And I think kind of that's just the general overview of things. There's been quite a few roster changes, but it's not that much of a surprise.
Do you think this is down to the season starting maybe quite early in the game cycle? Like, it was literally out for like 3 weeks and then bang, we're in. Like, we could have something to do
perhaps avoided a lot of this if the season didn't start so quickly. Yeah, but we've already gone over that. There's pros and cons to that, and overall, I think for a lot of people, we kind of like that the season's getting off so quickly. So there is pros and cons, evidently, and there's also the argument: hey, if you want to make sure you've got the right team going into Gears 5, have your team at the end of Gears 4 sorted out. The game isn't, you're not changing franchise here. NRG is the same. If they can do it and use Finest, etc., then perhaps other teams can as well. So there's also that argument you give to the players at that point.
I think until anything major happens, then we can sort of always brush over that one. But let's go to questions in the chat. We will start to wrap this one up very, very shortly, just because I'm aware that the semi-finals are starting to populate in the Trip-Cap Cup, and I know you guys love casting over Gears of War, so
love it.
We will jump into some of them that have already been asked, and then anybody after in the chat as well, we will answer questions. So cool. Let's start from. Have a look. How about they change melee to shotty combo? It feels like the judgment combo. Melee to shotty combo. Is it too powerful? I'll love it because I'm shocking at the game. I'm just running around like, hey, I'm absolutely sick at this. But it does feel a bit easy.
It's a bit easy. For me, I wouldn't mind it too much if the knife didn't lunge so far. Like that's kind of how I feel about it. Like I think if you're in a distance in which I can melee you like this close after my shotgun, then I should be able to shot melee. And there should be some kind of bonus for me deciding to use the melee at melee range, right? And I think right now you can shoot and melee at the same time, which is an issue. There should be a delay between it.
It's too fast, yeah.
The melee shouldn't like latch onto someone. It's not a homing missile, it's a knife. And you should direct where that knife goes. And if that be in front of you, right? It shouldn't be 45 degrees off to the side. And players,
if it's going to be a lunge, at least don't have it automatic, like an aim
lunge
assist.
Forward. Exactly.
It should lunge in the direction you're going, as if you were shooting, I suppose.
Yeah. So that's mine. I don't particularly like it. But I don't think it's horrendously obnoxious. It's not good for the game, but it's not the thing that we should really be dialing down on. It just needs tuning ever so slightly and a little bit of a delay adding.
My main issue with this is a big issue, actually. It's the fact that when these players lock onto you and lunge for you, if they hit you and you're mid-bounce, not only will they be able to reach you because of the distance and obviously lock on, regardless of whether they thought you were going to wall bounce or not, but they also stop you immediately mid-cover slide there on right in the tracks. And the issue with that for me is the fact, if you remember two-piecing back in Gears 1 and 2, if someone whacks you mid-bounce, you carry on. So it's up to them, the aggressor who is trying to melee you, to recover because they've meleeed at an incorrect time. They've meleeed at a time where they perhaps should have shot, held their melee, and meleeed at the end of that cover slide. But no, on this game, they can combine that accuracy, that range to stop you in your tracks. And for you being the one to try and dodge, you're actually punished for that. Stop in your tracks at some point with their gun aiming right on you after damaging you. And I hate that component of it. I really dislike it. I wish that would change back to how we've, usually had that. Melee has always been a big thing in Gears, more so in games where two-piecing is more prevalent. Let's keep it the way that is. And then we can start talking about, lunge distance, lock on, etc. I think the melee system has been designed much more so around, think games like Call of Duty and Halo, where it is a bit more lock on and there is some range to it, just so it feels a bit more snappy, maybe a bit better for newer players to understand how it works and easier to aim with. But I think it does need toning down just a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how things develop with the top teams, the most skilled players, how they utilize that against other top players who are also aware of said melee, and you kind of like see the meta develop, if you will, around that. I think it's perhaps a bit early days currently. I know I myself haven't mastered spamming, melee in between shots and whatnot at times. So I'm not going to say, hey, this needs done, this needs doing it. But that component of for me, stunning mid-cover slide, I really don't like that. And I think that is something that should be addressed regardless of how effective melee is.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question in that case then. Thoughts on Escalation 2.0? I think we've discussed that last week and the week before. Touch on it again. There's some changes we like to see, I think. Wasn't there? But I think our issue with Escalation was more to the fact that it could maybe get a little bit stale because of playing the one game. I think that was more our thought around it rather than a dislike for them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I don't particularly mind it. I kind of is my mic picking up? I think it is.
Yeah.
It just wasn't showing up on Zoom. I kind of think that, like, I don't mind it. I like the changes. I like the idea of adding lives. I think that's a good change. I think it makes players more aware of what they're actually doing rather than just flying in. I like the new weapon placement system to a degree. Like, I think there are changes that I would make to it, like not being able to place duplicate weapons. So if one team chooses a Markser, that's it. And then you have to counter it. And I think that as a change would make things a little bit more interesting, because that's when you start to see different teams have different answers to what the first placing team has put down. It's not just a copycat scenario. However, the main issue for me, and this kind of compounds the second issue, is there is not enough weapons in the game for it to be a truly amazing mode. And that's been an issue in Gears 4, and it's now an issue in Gears 5, in that there's just not enough to play with for teams to become unique, to have that own that own style, that own identity. And that for me is a huge thing. It's like, if you look at other games, let's take League or Dota, right? You have your champions, and certain champions will be better than others. However, there's enough choice that there are counter picks, and there are picks that are specific to teams that they get countered or they get banned, or there's a whole other game of what is this team going to place and what is this team known for that we don't currently have, because there is not enough weapons to choose from. So that's something I'd like to see a lot more, is with title updates and whatnot. I'd like to see each title update bring a new weapon in, or bring something in that is going to systematically change how Escalation gets played rather than how the mode is played. In general, though, I like it. I think it's got charm. I think it's a step up, but I think there are things that do need addressing with it. And the weapons, for me, is number one.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said there, Alex. I think the lives as well. I know you've touched upon this in previous weeks, that I think 5 might be a bit much lives to start with, because a lot of the time they don't really come into play. And usually the amount, the life pool being so large, it reset in a half time. It's not really a go-to strategy for these teams out of the box. It's kind of like an afterthought at this point in time. Like, oh, wait, we've just noticed he's died a lot. Let's now target him. Yeah, sure, that will come into play. But if it was less, teams would have to be a bit more mindful about their deaths, and teams could actually strategize around their slaying power and their weapon placements around that, based on, hey, we just want to outslay them from the get-go before things even start. At the moment, it's a bit more reactionary. I don't think it's fully utilizing the potential in the live system.
Just while we're on the topic, I saw something in the chat, and it's kind of interesting to me, because I kind of agree in that it says the The mace is broken. This isn't Halo, right? Agreed. The rocket gun. This isn't COD. Agreed. And I think that is a key in what I'm saying, is that these weapons need to be grounded in Gears. I'm looking at things like the Digger. I'm looking at things like the Breach Shot from Judgment, like weapons that felt Gears, that weren't horrendously overpowered, but were ever so slightly different than what we've got now. And that felt like they belonged in the universe, right? That's kind of what I'm getting at. I don't think, I'm not asking for the world, right? I'm not asking for cluster bombs and all sorts of other different things like jetpacks. I'm just asking for grounded weapons.
You don't want that.
No one's asking for that, and no one's suggesting that here either. Like, we're asking for grounded weapons that make sense within the Gears universe, that feel like they could be part of the Gears universe, and I think that's important to clarify. It has to feel right. It's no good just adding weapons for the sake of it.
Agreed. All right, there's a couple more questions that we'll go through, just because I do want to make sure you guys because I know how excited you are for it. This is a question for actually there's one above that as well. So what change is most needed to Gears 5 right now? Let's make it a quick one. Toby, go.
Okay. We talked about the aim assist and bullet magnetism, so I won't talk about that again. But hey, meet us halfway, democratic approach. Give us King of the Hill, aim assist off. Thank you. Then you can, whatever. Apart from that, the ranking system, I think that's the main thing people are complaining about. Most modes are ranked. Hey, let's fix the ranking system. Seems like you stay in Silver 2 longer than you do in Gold, Onyx, Diamond, etc. Not sure if that's intentional on TC's part, but you need time for the ranking system to develop. I think that's been their argument at times as players move about the coding or whatever, or the weighting of certain ranks changes. Not too sure. That needs. I can see your face, Chris. Just don't want to just stare at me. What else?
Wrap it up.
It was a quick one.
Okay.
Through your turn.
I'll leave it to
All
us.
Biggest change. You good? Biggest change. Not a change, but an addition. I want a replay system. I can't stress how important this is for professional teams to have a system where they can look back at replays and track and plan and prepare for the teams that they're coming up against. Right now, you have to rely on, VODs from Twitch that people can make private or delete. And it's not good for fostering a competitive environment. This is a competitive podcast to a degree. And for me, that's the one change that would make the biggest difference to how Gears is currently played. It would add so much for teams.
From me, I would like another game mode in competitive, personally. I think that's it. I think it would just add another element. I'd make teams have to be deeper. I think you have to have different elements to your game. Not just playing the slow, typical, what we see in Escalation, maybe something a little bit faster in there. I've always suggested King of the Hill because I love that shit, but I know obviously changes have to be made to that before we even think about bringing King of the Hill in or any other game. In fact, I know a lot of people want Execution. That's an argument that's gone on since the dawn of time.
Can I mention one more issue?
Oh, God.
One more issue. All right. This is the main game breaker for me, actually. I don't know how I forgot about this one, but at the moment, at least on PC, you cannot find games as a 4-stack. If you've got a really good 4 high ranking in that playlist, I think on console as well, can't really find a game. 5-stack, impossible. Don't even try. Okay, we tried for 60 minutes for the sake of it in KOTH, King of the Hill, one of the most popular modes, as Node Zero said today on Twitter. In Gears 5, couldn't find the game in 60 minutes, and it's the same on console as well. So it's not just a PC issue. I know PC has a lower player base due to rank crossplay toggle. Could we please stop restricting 4 stacks and 5 stacks so much? It even goes down all the way to 3 players. 3 players. Matchmaking times can go to 10 minutes in modes where there would usually be 2 minutes for 2-player parties. I don't like that. Again, it brings the discussion of what's truly ranked. TDM, it's not got that much competitive integrity as it is. Can we please just play with friends, even if those friends are likely to win?
Yeah, I think the solo players will cry out at that saying, no, please don't make me play against the 4 or 5 stack. But in that case, you say get some more friends. Right, come on,
Foster making friends.
Toby, you're gonna like this one. Mouse and keyboard versus controller. Is there a big difference? Toby Campbell, this is your moment in the spotlight.
How long do I have?
Not that long.
60 seconds.
Is
It's
there a
questions
big
from the
difference?
chat. It's not a seminar.
I love it. Sit down. Let me tell you about PC Gears. All right. So, yes. One word is yes. There is there is a big difference between mouse, keyboard, and controller. As much as I argue pros and cons, people usually find me debating Twitch chats as to the balance between the two. Would I allow mouse and keyboard to go against controller in esports and Gears like we see on Fortnite? No, I would not. Not fair at all. But would I allow mouse and keyboard crossplay versus controller in TDM? Yes, I would, because I don't think it's that huge. I think player skill does still come into it, despite mouse being better at aiming than a controller. I myself, in the top team back in Gears 4 for PC, when we scrim against some very good players, think Domes, professional players like Vital, we lost. The 5 best PC players on a mouse, we lost. I think it was 3-2 in a wager. So it wasn't just a scrim. It was everyone trying as best they can, streamed, etc. And I think that is just an example, a real-time example, if you will, that Gears mouse and keyboard is not like COD or CS or Halo, where aim is much more important and aim is perhaps much more difficult and reaction times are much more important. Gears still has a lot of skill behind it. It's not who shoots first wins. And so please,
I can pay testament to that. I was terrible on Xbox. I'm still terrible on PC.
Individuals do not argue. Gears fans do not argue as though Gears is Halo or COD or CS. Do not compare it. It's apples to oranges. It's not fair. I promise you that the better team of 5 will typically beat the team on PC, even if they've got controllers and they're not on PC themselves. And
we could then go into the crossplay argument of should PC players be allowed to play in these esports tournaments, etc., etc. But I feel like we'll be.
You can just watch episode 2 for that discussion.
I think, as I said from the start, no, I think mouse arguably has too much of an advantage against controller for esports. Where I would draw the line where crossplay shouldn't be disabled is modes like TDM, King of the Hill at the very least. I think Escalation Execution, because that's not a scrim finder, let me remind you. It is still what is described as a ranked experience. Teams are rarely balanced. The map pool isn't, the competitive map pool historically, at least in Gears 4, of course. I think where you can draw the line at the very least is modes like TDM, Guardian, etc. Take rank, crossplay, toggle off, end run. There we go.
End run. Fruit, anything from you on the
just
on that one? Or should we just leave Toby Campbell to drop the mic on that
one? I'll be short and sweet, but I don't mind it.
There you go.
Yeah, I'd play crossplay. I do play crossplay. I don't toggle it off. I have found no need to toggle it off. So yeah, all for it. I don't mind it as long as it's there's a structure for comp. Then let the general player base play as they wish. Why not?
All right, let's end it on this one from Bossman, because he has been chatting out the whole way through. So thank you very much for hanging out with us, mate. But
he's a good egg.
We'll give you the last question. A bit more of a serious one. Do you think with TC not addressing issues such as the Marksman and the Flashbang and Roster Mania causing problems, as well as a lot of people quitting, it could all be too little too late with TU2?
Depends on the players. Simple as that. I think if you are a competitive player and you are interested in competing in Gears and you want to play it long term, then a month should not be a problem for you. In a month's time, we'll only just have the first Pro League sorted. We'll only just be, starting to figure out who the best, better teams are on this game. And quite honestly, like it's a month. A month in the scale of it is nothing. We're going to be playing this game for years. And if they fix it by TU2, then they've done a bloody good job. It took many of TUs in previous games to get it right, and 1 month for me is not too big of a price to wait.
I think if you are, I was going to say narrow-minded, but it's not really what I want to say. You can't maybe constrain it to maybe this game only being active esports for a year. It's going to be a couple of years.
Yeah,
there is a long cycle in this game, and I think because of a bad start, I don't think that should deter players from playing. I think it should encourage them to the point of where this can get better when the Pro League comes along. There is more to play for, I think, this year as well. So I think when it gets to the point of where the Pro League's on, the hype's there, I think this will probably rise a little bit as well. I think that you've got to give it some time. It's the same with any other game. And I go back to the issue of maybe potentially the season started a tiny little bit early. I think, if you give that a bit more time, then you're playing maybe a more polished game, then possibly then you retain some of that. But at the same time, if you don't start it as early, do you still have as many interested parties? It's sort of a double-edged sword at this point, I think. I think it'll be fine. I think, there's more of a structure this year, which is what is important for me. I think that's the most important.
Something I didn't really touch on as well in my answer is that a lot of people, they look at the Pro League as the be-all and end-all, right? In actual fact, if you are one of these let's say top 6 to 8 teams, any event outside of the Pro League is going to be restricted to that top 5 down. So you've got so much more chance to actually win things and get your name in the light.
And there's the relegation as well.
Yeah, than you did in Gears 4. And this could mean you have more LAN experience than some of these pro teams. You have experience ready for the next set of qualifiers that, you couldn't get this in the previous game. And there is going to be, new winners at LAN events. There are going to be more teams taking home different amounts of money. And in general, it's a better construct. It's a better way of dealing with the system. But it is up to the players at the end, right? I mean, it is up to players to just give it a little bit of time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is Gears 5 going to be. It's just one of those things.
Just one of those things. I think you maybe just need to be patient with it. It will happen. As you said, Rome wasn't built in a day. You look at CS, that game's been going for 15 years. That one at the very beginning, CSGO, what was it all sunshine and roses. This game, I'd imagine, isn't going to last as long as that, and doesn't have an initial player base as big as what CSOC did. But comparatively, it's an example you I think that's going to wrap it up quite nicely. Thank you very much for coming on, boys. Thank you to everybody who hung out in the chat. We got a big host halfway through, and
yeah, it's been good.
And we've retained quite a few of you. So thank you very much to everyone who was interested. Drop a follow. We're live every Thursday at 7 or 8 p.m. Depends when Toby's getting his hair washed. But yeah, we're on at some point on the Thursday. But I'm glad a lot of people in the chat enjoyed it and engaged with us. If you missed any of it, then of course you can go onto YouTube, which has been, I can see it, Moobot's put it in there. Then you can go and watch back to what you missed, or you can listen on Spotify, Apple Music, and Google Music, of course, via podcast. Anything from you two? Parting words. Good episode.
Very good. Just really good to interact with everyone in the chat as well. I think this has been the best one chat-wise.
Because Elliot's not here.
Yeah, like we
feel
see
threatened
Elliot
by him.
No, Elliot's good. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been good, and I like that there's a lot of different views.
We're very open to listening to these views and discussing them. We're not going to come in here, and if somebody says something, we're not going to tell you to shut the fuck up or anything. Yeah. We're going to discuss it. We're going to discuss it. So positive discussion. Anything from you, Toby?
Just to echo that, I think this has been our best episode so far. Thank you to Kenny Bounce for the host, and as you said, I think we retained a lot of you guys, so thank you for sticking around and supporting changing gears and European gears, I guess. It's been a particularly fun episode as well because I've been ranting, and I do love a good rant, especially on gameplay. I love these gameplay chats. Podcast is called Changing Gears anyway, so true. Changes to gears is especially something that I'm interested in. So thank you.
I'm the host.
Thank you for the opportunity, Kristen. I like it.
Wow. Oh, God, you're very welcome,
An
Toby.
outlet to rant. I love it.
Right, we'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching Changing Gears episode 4. As said, we'll be on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Google. There's so many lists now, I'm going to end up forgetting some of them soon, but we will catch you for next week's episode. As said, stick around. We will be hosting the TripCap Cup semi-finals and finals casted by these two beautiful gentlemen as well. So if you want to see some EU Gears gameplay, stick around. We'll be live on that in, depending on Toby's production, probably about 20 minutes, I would say. We'll be back shortly. But thank you very much for listening, and we'll